So today I want to talk a bit more about some of the experience of being on the pilgrimage, and specifically, I was focusing on our time with Ajahn and Anun, and I picked out 7 of the questions that were asked while we were there and the answers he gave. And so I thought I would read that, and then we can discuss, how it lands for us, and um, what we take away from it, what we think about it. So I divided these particular questions into 3 categories. And the first area is dealing with other people. And the first question I have here was asked, if there is someone in your family who's hot-tempered and angry, how can you live with them? And if you don't like them, how can you live with them? And Ajahn Anand's reply was, if someone is angry and you get angry or aversive towards them in turn, then the Buddha taught that that's not good, that's not correct. Instead, if someone gets angry, then one cultivates a cool mind and spreads loving kindness to them to help them reduce their anger. Because you see, if someone gets angry, they're under the influence of ignorance. Ignorance is covering over their mind, and that's giving rise to the anger in them. So if you get angry back at them, then that just means you're also under the influence of ignorance. And ignorance is covering your mind as well to make you angry. So if someone's angry, instead of getting angry with them in turn, then you cultivate that coolness, that metta, and spread that to them. You determine that you won't follow the defilements of the mind, and also patiently endure. One has to patiently endure with the moods in one's own mind as well. So again, this might be something we all know, because the Buddha, of course, taught, and it's right at the beginning of the Dhammapada. You never solve or resolve hatred with hatred, or you can also look at that. You never overcome anger with more anger. It's only love that can put an end to it. And of course, this can also come up when we talk about the world situation later on too, and we know this. In fact, every major religion has a similar teaching. When I was in the seminary school, it was interfaith, and they had a Christmas event once where the children came up to the front with quotes written on cards from each major religion that has this same teaching in it. It's only love that overcomes hatred. It's only love and caring that can overcome anger. And so, this idea, it's a little more obviously in this answer from Ajahn and Nun, really, really being able to have the mindfulness to not just be a tuning fork. How tuning forks operate. You have 2 tuning forks, and you strike one and it starts to vibrate, and the other one starts to vibrate without being struck. And that's the way we are as human beings. One person has an emotional experience, and it's transferable, it's contagious. And we have to have mindfulness and clear determination to not follow that impulse or that energy, and instead to cultivate the cool mind. I was really happy to see that as part of his expression. The retreat that Carol mentioned at Cloud Mountain this year is going to be cooling the mind, warming the heart, because there's that coolness of mind that comes when we're practicing, and then how do we cultivate that, and how do we cultivate that in a heated situation? So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions. around this sharing. Yes, James.
Yeah, this is certainly relevant to me because my brother is inclined to being a bit temperamental, and I'm trying to work on dealing with that. And I think I've made some progress. I think I've got at least a bit into the cool mind stage, but I'm not quite to the meta stage yet. But at least there's the possibility of that, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm no doubt going to see him over Christmas, and I came up with a thought that maybe when I meet people like him, perhaps I should imagine them as being like little children. So not knowing any better, it's his wife is a bit that way as well. So maybe if I see him, imagine them as children, then I could be perhaps a bit more forgiving of their delusions and their anger and their the problems they might cause.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether maybe you were saying about the cool mind that I think sometimes if you approach situations with more of a cool mind, at least a cool mind, if not a mind of metta, it kind of brings out a better in other people as well. So hopefully, if I have that approach, you might be less inclined to be problematic.
Yes. Yes,
Thoughts.
absolutely. Again, the contagious nature of our emotions spreads
Mm.
both directions. And if we have the mindfulness and the restraint and the patient endurance, then we can deal with our own heat, internal mental heat, and we can provide more stability. A lot of times when people don't have any kind of practice or training that helps them with this, or even that they realize there's a benefit to that, because a lot of times when people have that tendency to be angry or heated in the way that they talk, there's a they think that's a good thing, like there's a personal strength that really bolsters the ego, and you can feel powerful, but it's actually such a false power. There's a lot of insecurity generally underneath. I'm not like I'm trying to psychoanalyze your brother, but it's like, that's so common.
No, that's another thing. Actually, as you were speaking, I was going to say I understand that the way he behaves actually arises from insecurity, fear, that kind of thing. So I guess at some point I should cultivate a sort of a compassionate response for that as well, because I understand why he's being that way. Um, and I think I've made massive progress, just not allowing myself to be that tuning fork that picks up that vibration and carries it on. So I consider that a great achievement in itself, or
It
very useful.
is.
I'm very grateful for. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it is a great achievement. It's huge when we change our patterns. It's huge
Mm.
when we are resistant to the tuning fork effect. It's really a big win. And at the very least, we're not causing as much trouble as we used to cause, maybe.
Yeah, it used to be annoyances like that would last months for me, but nowadays sometimes it's days, sometimes it's hours, sometimes I can let it go pretty quickly. But I suppose I'm still regretful, really, though, that I just sort of accept that I've just got to keep my distance from him as well. You know what I mean? It's sort of keep maintain that space. So I don't live with him, fortunately. Otherwise, yeah, it'd be even more challenging. But it sort of saddens me slightly that that I have to maintain this distance also just to protect myself as well. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, the Buddha recommended that we distance ourselves,
Mm,
so it's not like there's anything wrong with it. It's just that, I'm sure there are things about your brother that you like.
oh yeah,
You,
qualities.
we'd always like well, not always, but a lot of our suffering comes from wanting things to be different than they are.
Mm,
And of course, we would love to have warm, loving relationships everywhere in our life. Like if the coworkers are, competitive and backbiting and whatever, or rude or harsh, you really want it to be different than that. You'd like to have a good relationship with everyone, but that's not the world we live in. Yeah, but I can appreciate that. And I'm really happy that you're on the path you're on, because it's so much relief.
Me too.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
great. And seeing results every day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And also, you never know when people in your life start to notice that there's something different happening with you. And sometimes when things really get tough, they'll ask you about it. They'll want your support. So you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
In the chat, we've got this message. I understand approaching with a cool mind when interacting with temperamental people, but as mentioned in the question, when living with someone who's constantly angry in an abusive way, would it not be good use of wise energy to remove oneself from that environment? And the answer, of course, is yes, oftentimes, yes. A lot of times I feel like I've heard Dhamma talks where we're encouraged to be patient and endure. We're encouraged to have more metta. And and I used to work as a volunteer for a battered women's organization. And when there are definitely situations where you just want to get out alive, and you want to get out without your own safety and sanity, your own well-being compromised to some great extent, or maybe even at all. So definitely, I feel like there always needs to be this disclaimer of, there are definitely times when you should leave. And the Buddha said that. He didn't talk about what the other person was doing. He talked about how you're doing. Like if your wholesome states are decreasing and your unwholesome states are increasing because of the situation, you should get out. And yeah, I'm not going to go into the personal story that brought me to be a volunteer at the Battered Women's Organization, but you can easily see that this happens for so many people, and it is very important to know when to leave and to be able to find the support to help you do that. Grace?
I wanted to bring something to the conversation that you told me once that completely blew my mind and changed my life. I was in a different workplace that was even more challenging. I was just in a situation where I felt for sure one day I was going to get fired. My manager was just unbearable. We would never see eye to eye. And I called you about it. And I really had the mindset at the time where I felt like there was like a window of how equanimous and how cool the mind could be. And this was just what humans could do. But in the call, you told me to go read Simile of the Saw before that big showdown meeting with my manager. And the part that really resonated with me was when the Buddha said, be like the earth. And no matter how much you dig the earth, you can't, like the earth is still there undisturbed. I don't know what the exact wording is, but it's something like that. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm not going to hold myself to the standard of what I thought human minds could be. I'm going to hold myself to the standard of dirt.
Yes.
And I went into the meeting, and the whole weekend before that Monday meeting, I was like, I'm like dirt. I'm like dirt. I imagined myself as dirt. I visualized myself as dirt. I went into the meeting, and like, no matter what inflammatory comments my manager threw at me, I was dirt. And not only did I not get fired, which was amazing because my manager's manager was there and HR was there, but our relationship totally turned around, and we were able to find appreciation for each other. And although I did leave the job, we left on really warm, friendly, affectionate, respectful terms. So yeah, thank you for telling me that day, and I hold that with me all the time.
Well, all I can say is sadhu for picking up the Buddhist teachings. This is what makes our lives change. This is what really brings peace, harmony, relief. Thank you. That was a beautiful example, Grace. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Memo.
Yeah, thank you, Ayya. One of the things that, or the teachings that resonated the most now, after some time coming back from Thailand, was when Lumpur Gangha was saying, don't do, I don't remember the phrasing, but don't make so much of a deal about what the external conditions or the other people is doing. Look at what you're doing internally. And that has been sort of my one of my practices lately. It's not easy, but I think it melts good with this teaching. Like, yeah, other people can be annoying, other people can be challenging, but how do I respond to them? And sometimes what I see is that in the moment it's hard to respond in the most wholesome way, but then I can like go through my reactions and see why I did it, and trying to not do it again, or to respond in a different way. So sometimes it's not about beating myself about, oh, you should have said this, or you should have been more cool or whatever. But the fact that I'm trying at that point just to look at my reaction and react in a different way. Sometimes it's not easy, but I try. And if I can't, or if I didn't react like to the dirt standards, like Grace said, well, then I can recall what happened and rehearse again and again and again until the mind and the heart cools.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly the way we learn, the way we retrain our conditioning, the way we put in the new causes and conditions to have a different result. I often I loved horses ever since I came into this specific incarnation, and I used to have horses, and sometimes when I was young, I would watch the steeplechase kind of races where they're jumping horses over these very difficult jumps. And I had a horse who I belonged to the Midnight Riders Club when I was in my teens. And one night so we would ride on the full moon nights, and we're running. Now this is like young people without much sense, right? We're running full speed on this road, and my horse jumped a log. And anyhow, you get the idea. So this is why I use this metaphor. Watching a steeplechase, this is this kind of like they run this course and it's timed, and that's how you win the race, by having the shortest time. And when a horse refuses to jump a particular jump, you would think, okay, well, they lost, and why don't they just ride off the course? But no, they take the horse back around, they jump that jump, and they finish the course. And I thought, what a beautiful metaphor for what we can do to train ourselves. Again, it's like Memo said, it's not like you're beating the horse because they didn't do the right thing. It's not like you're having to go through a whole bunch of penance or anything. It's like, just take the horse back around, just take the mind back around. Let's take that course again, that particular jump again, that particular challenge again, and see what you're going to do. Do it the right way. Even if you have to try the jump a couple of times, come around and do till you get over that jump. and then continue the course and finish. And they do it slowly. They just take the horse all the way through. And, that's really like, we can do that. We can revisit, just like Mamo described. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yes, Mahesh.
So I have one question on the anger. So whenever people become angry at others, there is usually some kind of expectations on how the other person should behave, and they start blaming the other person for that. So when I'm responding to someone who is angry at me, or when I become angry, how should I, in both cases, how should we check on these expectations, and how should we address, let's say if someone is angry on me for not meeting certain expectations, how should I address those expectations? And similarly, when I'm becoming angry on someone because I have some expectations, how should I look at them?
Yes, so we may have perfectly reasonable expectations. Like maybe there's some agreement that we have that things are going to be done a certain way and the person isn't doing it. But anger never helps. I mean, it may look like it helps in the beginning because you make people afraid. And then, like I've seen parents, this is the way they treat their child, get angry at them, and then they, become more meek. But in the end, they just try to get around it. There's no caring, there's no understanding. So the way that we want to approach it is, first of all, try to cool the mind. Don't speak when we're angry. Calm the mind down. Don't act out of anger. Never punish out of anger. But to really just cool the mind down and then reflect and talk about it. Like, why are you doing it this way? Why are you taking this approach? Can we find out what's behind it? Sometimes there can be perfectly reasonable things behind it, but the person hasn't figured out how to express that, or we haven't really looked at what's happening. There are so many different angles on any situation. So stopping ourselves when we're angry, taking time if we can to cool the mind, and then come back to the situation and talk about it, and try to really put ourselves in their shoes to see what they're saying. And a system like nonviolent communication, NVC, is really helpful. Parent effectiveness training is the system I really like, and they have management effectiveness training, teacher effectiveness training, ways of working with being upset, which the Buddha also, everything I've ever gotten out of any kind of psychology or system, the Buddha actually has in his teachings. We just didn't see it that way. So that's where I go. But, like to really, as Memo was saying, to really pay attention to what's happening in ourselves and work with that. And then when we're talking with other people, to be able to really listen to them and to be able to repeat what you're hearing so that you know that you understand them. So when someone's upset, what we do is listen. We have to deal with whatever anger might arise in us, but then we listen. And then we say, this is what I hear you saying. Is this what you mean? Is this how you feel? I mean, and you don't just read, you don't just listen to the words, you watch their body and you listen to the expression and you see the upset in them. And if we practice this way, often what comes up more when you're hearing someone be upset is compassion. And this is super challenging, especially if they're yelling at you, because we want to defend ourselves. But it doesn't work. It just creates more conflict, usually. Or somebody goes into being submissive and then later rebellious. When parents tell me that teenagers just have to go through this rebellious period and fight against you, I don't believe it. My children didn't. I mean, okay, I'm sorry. That almost sounded like bragging. I mean, one thing my mother always said is never comment on what other people's children are doing because you never know what yours are going to do. So that's not what I meant. But the point is, I think if we have the support, the training to help us listen to our children and or our boss or our partner or our friends or whoever, if our go-to response when someone's upset is to listen to them deeply and hear them and respond by repeating what or expressing what you see there, give them a chance to correct us. No, that's not what I mean. Okay, so what do you mean? This is very hard to do. It really takes practice. But that's what you do when someone's upset. You listen. Be dirt. If you're dirt, you're not coming back with a reaction. So that's exactly in line with this. If we're angry, make a determination to not talk on if we have to talk, if we have to handle it because there's some kind of time pressure, then to at least say, I'm feeling so unsettled right now that I'm concerned that this might not come out right. But to know that is a huge step. It's a huge step to understand that if I speak out of anger, it's just going to cause damage to this relationship. And we need to care more about the relationship than we do about the subject matter at hand. Because who really cares? You know, whatever the person is doing that we don't expect, or that we not living up to our expectations, that thing, that situation in the world, that's going to come and go. People everywhere are doing the same thing. I don't get upset with them. I don't even know them, but it's happening always, you know, with other people too. We have to look at, why do I feel upset about this? Well, maybe it has a real impact on us. But then the way you handle that is calmly, without the emotional charge. You talk about how this affects you. Okay, the example in parent effectiveness training, you know, when you leave your bike laying in the driveway, and I might run over it without seeing it, and then it's damaged. You don't have a bicycle. I have to get something repaired. Maybe it ruins a car. You know, whatever it is, you know, like this is the possible effect. And this is also what the Buddha taught. There's cause and effect. Look at what the cause is of the problem we're experiencing. But if we do that with anger and upset, we cause damage to the relationship. And that's where we make our karma, in relationships, usually. And so we want to really take care of that. So we take care of our own mind, and we take care of how we're affecting other people, and we take care of how we allow that to affect us. And I would recommend going to a parent effectiveness class, even if you've never wanted children. Sorry. Well,
I'm not coming.
but you've been parenting me? No. Aww.
I know, mama.
Little role reversal. Was there a comment that I should attend to?
No.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Okay. Let's see. We might only get through 2 today. That's okay. We can come back to these later. So the next question was, I was wondering if you have any advice. This is to Ajahn and Anun again. I was wondering if you have any advice on dealing with impatience and wanting to control situations and control people. And Ajahn and Anun said, we have to see why the mind is agitated or impatient. It's because ignorance is controlling the mind. That's why we're agitated and impatient. It's because of ignorance. Now, that's not the way we usually think about it. We usually think we're agitated and impatient because somebody's not doing the right things. That's the way we think. And we have to come back to this idea that I'm agitated and impatient because of ignorance. We have to have mindfulness to know that. But once we know that, then we recollect the first point of practice, which is to have virtue. It's to have sila. So this again is really seeing virtue much more deeply than the 5 precepts. It's like to recognize that if I'm agitated, I also have a sila issue. Wow, interesting, huh? So that's the first point of practice, have the sila. At that point, we're not able to contemplate it as not self because there's already self and other at that point. So we're thinking in a way that I'm agitated, I'm upset because of what you're doing. You're making me upset. Many of us know to not use that language because nobody makes us upset. We don't have to be upset. We can be dirt. It's not, that over there is not my problem. However, if I'm anxious or I'm upset, I'm impatient, that one is my problem. But we're dealing in a self and other here. So we can't go directly to the highest wisdom, which is there's no self here and there's no self over there. Why am I making a big deal out of this? Okay, so then he says, so you have to practice and train firstly in loving kindness and virtue, and also patient endurance, because everyone has impatience and agitated mind. Everyone has aversion. So firstly, we have to control ourselves, have patient endurance, and however much we have disliking or aversion, we have patient endurance with it. So it's like for our own anger, our own impatience, our own aversion, we have patience with that. But it's not, patience doesn't mean it, oh, I'm just, that's okay, we're just gonna let that run. That's not the kind of patience. It's the patience of coming back and cooling the mind and looking for the cause and trying to help us move through that ignorance to wisdom. Okay, so we have patient endurance with those mental states of our own as well as others. And if we really can't take it, then we just walk away from the situation. So this idea of give yourself space, count to 10. Ajahn Ganha said, hold your breath. When you're angry, just hold your breath. Pretty soon you're more worried about being able to breathe than you are about whatever else is happening. If other people try to control you, do you like it? I remember when he asked the person this question, and they're like, who likes it? Nobody likes it. Yeah, so you see, we don't like it. Others don't like it. So what should we do? Well, we should consider what benefit or value we think it has and what drawback it is to control others. So really looking at that. It's like when I was saying, if we respond with anger to someone, it hurts the relationship. You might not see it for a while. You might not see it till those kids have grown up, or at least hit their teens. But you're not as close unless you come back and really, really mend that whole thing. So we've got to really reflect on the results of our actions. We have to contemplate that very often. Meditate, contemplate, bring the mind to peace and to samadhi, and then understanding will arise in our own minds. If we try to control others and they don't accept that, and they try to fight with us about it. Wait a minute, I lost my place. Sorry. Then they try to fight with us about it. then what will happen? Okay, so let me try that again. If we try to control others and they don't accept that, and they try to fight with us about it, then what will happen? It will be chaotic. But sila is peaceful. So that's kind of a hint, like when we're not peaceful, what's the sila issue? What's the moral issue that's being overlooked? And then he says, if you're not able to do that, if you're not able to stop yourself, then you can ask, how can I control myself? How can I undertake virtue? You can try just not eating. If you're not able to do it, then you just don't eat. You can also try keeping the 8 precepts. And then you can also just eat plain rice if you can't control yourself. And then if you're still angry at that point, then you can just only eat a little bit. And if you can't control it still, again, you just don't eat anything at all. And then you'll be so tired that you won't be angry with anybody. So you say, well, I'm going to give up being angry and not having that angry mood anymore because you think it's really better to eat. So you don't want anything anymore. You don't want to be angry anymore. And then you have the energy and the strength, and that's how it is. He said this is important. So that's how important it is to not be angry, to not hold anger, to not respond with anger. Don't eat until it's over. Or hold your breath until you don't want to be angry anymore. What do you think, Serena?
This is wonderful information. Thank you, Ayya. And I have a lot of work to do. And that's not a news flash. I have a new aspiration though, to learn how to become like dirt. And I've never come across that teaching. So could you direct me a bit to begin to learn about what those properties are that the Buddha is talking about?
Yeah,
Please?
it shows up in a few places, but the one that Grace was reading was Simile of the Saw, which is in the Majjhima Nikaya. I think it's number 11 maybe, or 21, something like that. But it's Simile of the 21. Yeah, Simile of the Saw. And it's really about, well, you'll see. It's great.
Okay.
It's great. You don't have any anger when the bandits come and they're sawing off your arms and legs. You only have metta.
Yep.
Be like the earth. And there's also a teaching to Rahula, the Buddha's son Rahula, where he talks about practice being like the earth. He also talks about the other elements. So if you're more like water, do water.
Okay.
If you're more like air, I don't know which ways he goes with that right now. I can't remember, but and that one's probably number 62 or something like that, or something like that in the Majjhima Nikaya.
Mabel's got some links in the chat already.
Okay.
If you wanna.
I'm in 21.
That one's the Simile of the Saw.
Oh, 21, right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I like that Ajahn and Anun put in there. We all have these mental states. This is not something to feel bad about. This is just the nature of being human. And the nature of being human, the wonderful part about being human is that we can change. That is so amazing. And we can develop mindfulness. We can watch our own behaviors. We can see what our mind is doing. We can project what the results are going to be based on the things we've learned from the past. It's amazing that we have this body and mind to practice. Carol?
Well, I just wanted to say that it's actually anger that brought me to the Buddha and the Dhamma over 15 years ago, because I was such an angry person. I was a single mother working 2 jobs, raising 4 kids. I was angry. But I didn't like the anger, and I didn't like the way that sometimes I would try to be angry because I like to feel angry. I didn't like all that. And somebody had directed me to Pema Chodron, did a talk, Don't Bite the Hook, teachings of Shantideva. Now I know that's Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism, but that was my start.
Pema's great.
Yeah.
Her books are wonderful from my
Yeah.
experience. I haven't read them all, but
Yeah, but that was my start on this road, and was Don't Bite the Hook. And it was great. It was just life-changing.
yeah.
Life-changing. So yeah, it does work.
And
So-
sometimes we need the simile, we need the image of the
Mhm.
earth. We need the image of the hook. Like right now, if
Mhm.
I get angry because you're angry at me, I'm biting the hook. Because we don't always see that there's a hook in there, that we're going to get pain from this. So it's really helpful. Yeah. Thank you, Carol. Yeah. Sometimes when we start to change, we feel really bad about ourselves because we start to see all the ways in which we like, oh my God, but then, to remember that that's true for everyone. Ajahn Ganha always also repeatedly said, zero out the past. I mean, we learn from it, but then just drop it. Zero it out. And sometimes if you just have that phrase, zero out the past, of course, we may have some work to do to kind of mend our past relationships, but I've also learned that if we change, it's so amazing how much people respond to that. Even if there's been a lot of bad things in the past, if we change, people really can embrace that refreshing difference in the way we treat them. It's kind of magical almost. Okay, I'm going to go for another question. This one's about meditation. So, my body is very sensitive, and so I don't use caffeine or other stimulants. But then I get really sleepy in the afternoon and the evening, and I don't find I can have productive meditation. My meditations are good in the morning, but then I feel I'm not using my time well enough. And I don't know if I should do something different in my life to have meditation in the evening also. And then I really got a kick out of this. Ajahn Anun said, no caffeine at all? This goes to show like how much we use this particular medicine. But anyway, then the questioner says, well, I can have a little bit of tea, but coffee, like right now I had coffee and that makes me shake and anxious. And Ajahn Anun says, well, then you do walking practice. At night, do walking. Whenever you're sleepy, just walk, do walking meditation, and you can chant in your mind. You can chant fast. So that one good thing about it is you can sleep whenever you want. That's a good fortune, he said. But whenever you're sleepy, just walk and walk. And then if you're still sleepy, walk backwards. Have you ever tried that? Or if you're in Thailand, you can just jump in the ponds here. Then you wouldn't be sleepy at all. Or you can sit meditation in the shower. And whenever you feel sleepy, just turn on the water. Especially if you're in Thailand without heated showers. It's cold. If you're really sleepy, you can put a cobra right next to you. You can put it in a box. Try it out. See if you're actually going to be sleepy. He said you can remove the fangs first. I don't know how to do that. Is there a YouTube for that? he says this is like going to the forest where there are tigers, or he said first, oh, the monks going to the cremation ground, they're not sleepy at all. They feel awake from the fear. Or it's like going to the forest where there are tigers, then you're not sleeping. So the mind can wake up like that. He's a forest master. He did not say what I often say, take a nap and see how it goes after that. You know? Comments or questions? Yes, Olivia.
Well, I can say that this was my question, and kind of report how I've been working with it.
How's the cobra?
I'm doing everything I can to not get a cobra. So
Snakes, Olivia?
I do like snakes, but I don't want to feed them mice. That's the thing that bothers me.
Now, there's a good reason not to have a cobra.
I actually don't think it would bother me to have a cobra. I'd be like, hi, nice little snake. I've tried the walking, including walking backwards. I do it for 15-20 minutes, and then I'm like, I don't feel like I'm meditating. That's been one challenge. Like I'm following my breath, but I think the level of activity is confusing for me. I've never really gotten into walking meditation. I shouldn't say never. There have been a few times, but it hasn't been a thing that can regularly quiet my mind. I have tried the cold dip. It worked for only like 10 minutes. Like you get this like rush of energy from the cold water, like with all the blood vessels recalibrating, and that gives some energy, but then I still fell asleep after like 10-15 minutes of meditating after doing that. I've also tried this isn't in his advice, but I think it's from Vajrayana, but like meditating with your eyes open and like looking up rather than down, because down the eyelids don't have very far to go before they're closed.
That's one of the Buddha's pieces of advice about dealing with sleepiness.
Oh, then it's not specific.
Yeah, it's in the suttas.
Okay, that's good to know. So all of them kind of work, like for a short period, but I ultimately have so far, and I confess I've only done maybe 7-8 trial runs. Most of the time I'm just like, I'm tired in the evening, and none of them really get me to like a properly meditative state. The thing that has worked in the past the most, which as you just said, Ayya, is like a really short nap.
Yeah.
And that might just be what I have to do, like a 10-minute, like set a timer kind of nap.
A power nap, I guess they call
it.
Yeah. And sometimes I can do that like 15 minutes and I'm ready to go, you know, again. But how about the shower? Have you tried the shower?
Sitting in the shower to like run it every time I fall asleep?
Uh-huh.
Haven't done it yet. Don't know why.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
60 degrees in my house, wearing a bathing suit, sitting in the shower. Yeah, it probably would work.
But again, you know, like people sometimes break through the sleepiness, and they can really meditate for an hour, you know, or whatever. That they get. My mom used to call it getting the second wind. You know, like if you're working and you're getting tired, and then you kind of push through it, and then you feel energy again. I think that's kind of what this is possibly gonna happen. But you do want to be able to actually meditate. Now, I would recommend maybe working more with walking meditation, because if you work with walking meditation when you're not tired, and you start to get a sense of what it's like to meditate in motion, that is very, very valuable, because then you can meditate in motion in other contexts. And also the Buddha said, if you can be in samadhi when you're doing walking meditation, your samadhi will last a long time. Again, it's getting more into that realm of Ajahn saying we should have sati, mindfulness, samadhi, and panya, wisdom, all the time. So like he said to us nuns that he has that kind of samadhi that might be the very first kind. Is it Kanaka? Kataka samadhi, the first Kanaka. I think it's Kanaka.
Yeah.
That first level of samadhi where you're kind of like accessing it. You know, you're just, well, that's a different one. You're just kind of like able to go in and out of samadhi, but that calm is there. There's a level of calm there.
It's not, I don't think it's in and out. It's that you are concentrated in each moment with the object that's currently present.
Yeah, that's one. I'll confess, this is from the commentary, and I'm not a commentary, or from the Visuddhimagga maybe. I'm not, that's not an area of study of mine. I really stick to the suttas more and Vinaya. But that kind of idea of what kind of samadhi do I have? And it's not just like, you know, a tight focus on each thing, because that's not really calm either. So what kind of like spiritual energy and uplift, a calm, peaceful, happy kind of state of mind that I have, that I can carry through the day, that kind of thing. So this is all benefits from a good walking meditation practice. So doing more of that, and doing more of it when you're actually not trying to fight off sleepiness might be.
Thank you. That would be, I can see the benefit. Absolutely. That seems like a really great direction.
Great. Yes, Joyce.
I don't know if this applies to others, but when I'm feeling tired and I'm resisting it, there's this subtle awareness of the tiredness that is accompanying this whole process. You know, if you can just really turn your mind to, I don't know, the breath or whatever it is you're using as your meditation object, and not like, it's very hard because sleepiness just wants to intrude. And you know it's there, and while it's there, you're resisting it. So it's keeping you from concentration. That's been my experience, and I try to work with this. But, you know, it is challenging for sure. But just wanted to throw that in. Love to hear what you say about it.
Yes, so my experience resonates with what I hear from Ajahn Brahm. He wrote in his book, Art of Disappearing, that he's never gotten benefit from fighting tiredness or fighting sleepiness. And he said he was trained to fight sleepiness. So this is very much a forest practice. Like you just sit on the edge of a cliff or whatever it takes to fight the sleepiness. But he says he just feels a subtle sense of aversion. You know, it just creates this aversion. And I think this is kind of what Joyce is pointing at, the challenge of turning away from that and just having our attention on our meditation object. The other part that I think Ajahn Brahm also addresses is that we can look at if there's any underlying cause for sleepiness, because sometimes you can be in a situation where every time you sit to meditate, you start to fall asleep. And of course, that could be just some deep fatigue, which needs to be taken care of with actual sleep and rest. But it can also be an emotional or psychological challenge that we're just avoiding being still because we don't want to deal with the underlying problem, not consciously, but unconsciously. So looking at, you know, what might there be that's not being addressed in my life. So that's also an important place to look. And And just, the idea of what happens when I'm tired or overstimulated. Sometimes we have so much stimulation in our lives. It's not the same as, living in the farming country in Northeast Thailand, and where things are much more quiet. There's just not as much stimulation. Nowadays, things have changed. Things have changed a lot in the last 25 years in Thailand. But or back where I grew up on the farm, there's a different level of stimulation now, and everybody's got this thing, and it's constantly available for stimulation. And so sometimes the mind is just so overstimulated that it either can't settle down, it's restless, or the flip side is it just tunes out. So we can look at those possible issues that we can mitigate by restraint and care for ourselves, kindness to ourselves. Okay. Okay, so this one, probably our last one today. While trying to develop calm samadhi, is it okay if I don't stick with the exact form of anapanasati, but more go with something that feels easier, such as just feeling the breath, as opposed to reciting, breathing in long, breathing out long? I mostly just feel the breath. It's easier for me to stay with the physical sensation, and that's the way I stay with it. So I don't go through the 16 steps. And Ajahn response is, I agree with completely. He said, that's okay. It's not that hard. Everything is fine. You just need to be able to breathe in and out. So all these subtle points, of which there are many, it all comes together. If it just can make you peaceful, that's good enough. Where did you eat this morning? Did you eat at the hotel? So there's many types of food. Do you need to eat all the types of food, or just eat until you're full? To make oneself peaceful, that's good enough. Just that much. So that's one of the things that sometimes I think I say it when I'm teaching Anapanasati, but I think I need to say it more, because you get focused on teaching people the 16 steps because it's useful to know them and to be facile with using them and mixing them and using them as support. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to, know this meditation method. The goal is to be able to rely on it, to make use of it, to calm the mind. If the mind goes directly into samadhi, who cares what the meditation method is? Just knowing that, and we all have different propensities or abilities. So, feeling might be more important, and to work with calming the mind, not thinking. So back to that. And we'll talk more about this in future meetings too. And I think I'll save these other questions and also bring some questions from some of our other sessions with other Ajahns in Thailand. So we'll leave it there for today.